In polite society, we are not supposed to talk about politics and religion. Today, I'm not feeling polite. Usually, it's a good idea to do research before voting for the candidate that best represents your interests for the United States. But here we are. We got Donald Trump as president-elect once again for the United States. And some people have just now turned to the internet to research what a tariff is. And I'm here to help you with that. Let's talk about how his campaign promises can affect your personal finances. According to Google Trends, the term tariff has increased in search traffic by 1,650% since the election. Clearly, some of us, especially in Washington, D.C. or Texas, did not do our homework before going to the ballot. And we need a refresher on what a tariff is. According to taxfoundation.org, tariffs are taxes imposed by one country on the goods that are being imported from another country. Tariffs are trade barriers that raise prices. They also reduce available quantities of goods and services for U.S. businesses and consumers. And they create an economic burden on foreign exporters. Before I go any further, I'm going to be dropping my sources in the description so you can read them for yourself if you like. The idea behind Trump's tariffs is to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States by producing goods here instead of importing them. The tariff is a disincentive for businesses to make items like electronics, like the phone or computer that you're probably watching this video on right now, overseas where the labor is cheaper. Here's the problem with this. It's just cheaper for American consumers to pay the tariff than it is to bring those manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Let's take the iPhone, for example. The average manufacturing wage in 2010 in China was about $2. And in America, it was $34.74. By locating that same iPhone factory to America, Apple would add more than $25 billion in labor costs each year, according to Forbes. But it's not all about cheap labor costs. If you look at the parts that makes up an iPhone, most of the components are only made in Southeast Asia. The OLED touchscreen is made in South Korea. In fact, every LCD screen or OLED screen is made in East Asia. The touch sensor is made by a Japanese company. The semiconductor chips possibly can be made here in the United States, which currently manufactures about 12% of the world's semiconductor supply. The radio frequency chips are either made by Intel or Qualcomm. I have the hardest time saying that, but either way, they both can be made here. Most memory chips are made by 4 companies in Asia, so there's no getting around that at all. The majority of consumer lithium-ion batteries come from China, but we've got at least 4% of the world's lithium in California, Nevada, and North Carolina. If you take a look at some of the suppliers that I mentioned, you notice that a lot of materials are exclusively being produced in Asia, and they cross over into other electronic devices, like your laptops, your PS5, any kind of, even cars. That means laptops, tablets, TVs, PlayStation 5s, exclusively laptops and tablets. I mean, 79% of those are imported from China and just can't be made here at all. So if Trump slaps those tariffs on those types of products, expect the price to go up for pretty much every electronic device, because we kind of need the parts that come from Asia to make those devices. I already mentioned the PS5. 87% of video game consoles are imported from China and can't be made here. And of course, cell phones. 78% of cell phones are imported and obviously cannot be 100% be made in America. Essentially, anything with a screen is going to be imported from East Asia and slapped with a tariff. I mainly spoke about how tariffs affect electronics, but we can also talk about cars too. There's only 10 cars that are made in America that use more than 70% American-made parts, according to Axios. 4 of them are Teslas. You can probably guess which 4 they are. They're the Tesla Model S, Model 3, Model X, and then the Model Y. So those are made 100% in the United States. 5 of them are Hondas. I can't name the Hondas off the top of my head, but I can put them on the screen here. And then the other one is the Volkswagen ID4. So if you don't like Teslas, Hondas, or the Volkswagen ID4, I've got bad news about the price tag for your next car, or even the price tag of repairs that you might make on your current car. Here's a list of the top 10 US goods that were imported in 2022. You can expect the price for all these things to rise if the tariff is applied to them. You'll notice that oil is on the list twice. That's going to be some foreshadowing for what we talk about in a minute. But next, I want to talk about immigration and how it affects your personal finances. And believe it or not, it does affect your personal life in a big way. First, I want to talk about this short news clip that I saw on NBC where they were reporting that wealthier Americans were deciding to leave the United States. They detailed the six-figure cost of how much it costs to immigrate to another country. Of course, there are people in the comment section who do not have the six figures that it costs to move to another country, talking about how they wanted to move anyway. Let's just say that you decided to buy a plane ticket from anywhere in the world, move to the United States, and then stay longer than you told them on your visa application. You'd be considered an illegal immigrant. According to NPR, at least half of undocumented residents didn't walk into the country at all, but instead have just overstayed their visas. This had been the case for years before the first Trump presidency, and we still spent at least $11 billion on the border wall, and Mexico didn't pay for it. The United States depends on immigration to grow the economy, and immigrants, legal or otherwise, benefit the country more than it hurts it. According to Congress.gov, many immigrants enter the United States at working age, and over their lifetime, they pay more in taxes than they use in government services. Additionally, immigrants also need to pay for food, housing, and spend money on leisure activities that expand economic demand, which means more money for American businesses. So maybe you've heard that immigrants are taking the jobs and eating the dogs. According to Pew Research Center, a majority of Americans don't even feel like they're taking the jobs. About 77% of Americans say that undocumented immigrants fill jobs that Americans do not want. Let's talk about some of these jobs. Dairy farms rely heavily on immigrant workers. At least 51% of workers as of 2021 are immigrants, according to Faunalytics. A study commissioned by the dairy industry suggested that if federal labor and immigration policies reduce the number of foreign-born workers by 50%, more than 3,500 dairy farms would close, leading to a big drop in milk production and a spike in prices around 30%. Total elimination of immigrant labor will increase milk prices by 90%. Immigrants also pick your fruits and vegetables that you enjoy on a daily basis. According to the newamericaneconomy.org, more than half of all farm workers in the United States are immigrants. The laborers themselves are a much larger percentage than the other jobs in the industry. This is the immigrant percentage of workers at these farms for their states. Of those numbers, at least 30% is thought to be undocumented. It's been a well-established problem that farms don't have the labor to support the amount of fruits and vegetables grown here. The website estimated by 2014, U.S. growers would have produced $31 billion more in fresh fruits and vegetables per year if they had the manpower available. But instead, Trump proposes that we kick those people out. As a consequence, in 2021, the percent of U.S. fruit and vegetables imported into the United States is at 60% for fresh fruit and at 38% for fresh vegetables. That's excluding potatoes, sweet potatoes, and mushrooms. We've already talked about who's going to be paying for the cost of those tariffs. Let's just say I'm going to choose to be very thankful at Thanksgiving this year, because next year's Thanksgiving might not look the same due to tariffs and immigration policy. The final agricultural industry that immigrants are involved with that will affect you directly is the production of meat. The outlook of what would happen if those workers were to disappear is similar to what I've already talked about with the dairy workers. Meat packing plants and poultry processing facilities are also heavily dependent on immigrant labor. Mass deportations in this sector could lead to bottlenecks in processing livestock and poultry. I say poetry like I'm spitting verses, but I mean poultry like the bird. Further limiting the availability of meat and dairy products, according to New York City food policy. As a result, farmers could face higher labor costs, which means higher costs for consumers. In the words of Kim Kardashian, nobody wants to work on the farms anymore. I'm sure that's how she said it. Lastly, we'll talk about inflation. Trump is going to lower inflation by drilling for oil. He's going to drill, baby, drill. Let's just say if the worldwide demand for oil stayed the same, this could lead to lower prices. at least for a short period of time. And that also means that they'd be making more oil for a lower price, which will cut into their profits. International producers could react to the increased production of oil that we're making over here by just slowing down their operations, allowing the price to rise, but that's really speculative. It honestly depends on if the oil industry wants to drill extra to bring the cost of oil down, which would also decrease the profits, while the oil industry on the other side of the world decides to keep drilling as if nothing's happening over here. So if oil companies are willing to lower their profits, we can have lower prices. But I wouldn't hold my breath. You're probably wondering how oil prices affect inflation. If I could put it in one word, it would be minimally. Oil is used in the production of plastic, and plastic is a huge part of our supply chain. So potentially by bringing down the cost of plastic, which means we're bringing down the cost of oil, but for prices to actually go down to what they were in 2020, something called deflation would have to occur. Short-term, deflation would feel like a relief for consumers. That means you're spending less money on your goods. And who doesn't like lower prices? But prolonged deflation would cause the economy to contract, because goods tomorrow would be perceived to cost less than goods do today. That would slow down consumer spending, which isn't good for economic growth. Let's put it this way. This PS5 controller costs about $75 right now. If the cost were to go down because of deflation to $65 starting in 2025, you're thinking, oh great, I get a $10 discount off the PS5 controller. Let's say a month later, the price of the controller drops by another $1. Oh great, that's an $11 discount. Then the next month it's $12. Then you start thinking, hold on, the longer I go without buying things, the more buying power I theoretically have as a consumer. And as a consumer, that feels great. That means people aren't putting more dollars into the economy because they know that the price that they pay today is going to be the highest price that they could pay for their goods and services. This ultimately would lead to people losing their jobs, because corporations would see their bottom line shrink. And when the bottom line shrinks, the first thing to go is the people that they're employing. So when the government says that inflation is under control, that really just means that inflation isn't exceeding 3% annually. The only real way to curb how inflation affects you personally is to earn more money. That's really the long way of saying that across the board, prices are never going back down. If they do happen to go down, like during the financial crisis of 2008 or during the Great Depression, we have bigger things to worry about. When it comes to specific products, particularly at the grocery store, the price can come down without deflation. Food prices are very volatile. We can see the overall inflation around 2%, while grocery inflation is around 1%. But we can see specific food prices go up and down sharply. We saw it with the price of eggs in 2021. I personally remember spending $5 for a box of crackers during March of 2020. There was no food on the shelves, and honestly, I probably got price gouged. But I didn't have a choice. There was nothing else to eat. While we're talking about price gouging, let's talk about something called greedflation. In short, it's the idea that companies made record profit at a time where costs were increased for everybody. In theory, if a corporation has to pay more to produce goods, you can expect them to pass those costs off to consumers. However, that also means that the profit margins should stay exactly the same. Let's say, for example, it costs $1 for a corporation to make this marker. And let's say that they originally sell this product for $10 at the store, which means their profit margin is going to be $9. Let's say inflation increased by 7%. That means that the cost to produce this marker went up from $1 to $1.07 because it's 7 cents on the dollar. So that means that they're also going to sell this marker for $10.07. We don't want to make the mistake of adding the 7% to the $10 sales price, because that means we're just charging the consumer 70% instead of the 7% inflation that costs to make the marker. You're gonna produce it at $1 and sell it for $10, your profit margin is $9. If it takes $1.07 and you're selling it for $10.07, your profit margin is the exact same. Anything in addition to that is out of the ordinary. I'll leave you several sources on greedflation and shrinkflation. That's when your large box of Frosted Flakes gets smaller even though the price stays the same. And I'll let you make up your own mind on whether corporate greed is contributing to you paying more money at the grocery store. I was originally going to wrap the video here, but let's talk about something that got a lot of attention during the election cycle that doesn't put money in your pocket or food on your table. Your kid's school is not trying to make your kids trans. A doctor won't even look at you for a checkup for free. Do you really think that they're out here doing surgery on children without parents knowing and they're not getting paid for it? Let's put some of the costs into perspective. Female to male top surgery costs between $3,000 and $10,000. The other way around costs between $5,000 to $10,000 according to Forbes. Bottom surgery costs a little bit over $25,000 to go from male to female and a few $100s less than $25,000 to go the other way around. Which child do you know has access to that type of money? And if you're thinking insurance will cover them, insurance doesn't even cover LASIK surgery. They really consider those types of surgeries cosmetic, which means you're going to be paying most of that out of pocket. Let's just pretend that insurance would cover this. What kid knows anything about the insurance plan that their parents have on them? When I was in football, the rule was don't come home with any broken bones. So I dislocated this finger. Don't know it's gonna focus. I dislocated this finger right here at this joint, and I dislocated the shoulder, but I got no broken bones. Most early 20-year-olds don't know about their insurance coverage. What teacher has the time to sit down with a child to talk about their parents' insurance coverage for them? Lastly, these surgeries take time to heal from. At the very least, top surgery and like facial surgeries is going to take a couple of weeks to heal from. Bottom surgery is going to take over a month and a half. I don't care how oblivious your kid is, someone in your kid's class is going to notice if another student is missing for 6 weeks and then comes back completely different. So for those of you with kids, I want you to talk to your kids. Can they count on 2 fingers the number of kids that has transitioned at their school? I'm willing to bet that they don't know any in real life. The only stories that you hear about this is on Facebook. And as we already know, nothing that we see on Facebook and TikTok is real. If you've watched this video up to this point, I just want to say thank you for being here. Personal finance and politics intersect way more than we like to think. And personally, it's something that I don't really cover extensively on this channel. I mostly talk about the journey of building a small business through learning and understanding personal finance, but money is political. So if you're interested in that, click this video right here and hopefully I'll see you over there. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've learned something today that you could use to create the life that you want to live.